In the previous episodes, we created a fixer using Cyberpunk Red's 3 approaches to character creation. We have added characterization using the life path system and defined stats and skills. Now we're almost done. What remains are material possessions like weapons and armor, as well as cyberware, a big part of Cyberpunk. Weapons come in 3 categories: melee weapons, ranged weapons and exotic weapons, the latter being melee and ranged weapons with special qualities. Melee weapons are generally tied to the dexterity stat, while ranged weapons are tied to the reflexes stat. Armor comes in 2 forms, body armor and head armor, where head armor protects against aimed attacks. Armor also provides a trait called Stopping Power, SP, which helps to protect your body from incoming damage. It's recommended to start the game with both some kind of weapon and some kind of armor, since most Cyberpunk games involve action and violence in some form. Street Rat and Edgerunner characters gain starting items from a role template in addition to 500 EB to spend on other items or to save for in-game use. EB stands for Eurobucks and represents the economy for purchasing items and services in-game. In the presented role template, some items are listed alongside the suggested alternative, where you get to choose one. For my character Mithra, the template suggests a heavy pistol or a very heavy pistol, another heavy or very heavy pistol, a light melee weapon, 100 rounds of basic heavy or very heavy pistol ammunition, a light armor jack body armor with SP11, as well as a light armor jack head armor with SP11. I select 2 of the heavy pistol variants for Mithra and not the very heavy ones. A heavy pistol deals less damage than a very heavy pistol, but it has a higher rate of fire and can be concealed. I note on my character sheet that I have 2 heavy pistols with 3d6 damage, ammo 8 and rate of fire 2. Under notes I write that the weapon can be concealed. For my light melee weapon, I note that I have a stiletto with 1d6 damage and rate of fire 2. I also note that it can be concealed. In the armor section of the character sheet, I note that I have SP11 in head and body, but no penalties. We'll come back to the complete package approach later. With weapons and armor done, the remaining gear is called your outfit. Edgerunners are known to keep their personal belongings close at hand, and many of them are always on the move. The Street Rat and Edgerunner methods provide a template of gear for your outfit. For Fixer, this includes an agent, basically a smartphone of sorts, a bug detector, a computer, 2 disposable phones, generic chic contacts and jewelry, leisure wear mirror shades, as well as urban flash footwear, jacket bottoms and top. If you want an overview of some gear, there's a list on page 100 in the core book. There's also a list of fashion on page 102. Keep in mind though that there's an error in the fashion list, since high fashion jewelry is listed as costing 50,000 EB. This has been errated to cost 5,000 EB, which is much more reasonable. You can find the latest errata on the Artelsorian website. Like with weapons and armor, we'll come back to the complete package approach later. Regardless of your approach to character creation, Cyberpunk Red offers a standardized lifestyle and housing situation. With the exception of XX, Edgerunners aren't meant to be well off. You start the game living in a rented cargo container in the overcrowded suburbs or in a combat zone. This is spacious enough to store your things, sleep comfortably and spend some downtime. You generally share restrooms and showers with residents of other cargo containers. You also live the kibble lifestyle, which means that you survive on horrible food and could possibly afford to see a movie maybe once a month. If you're an exec, you live rent-free in a corporate connapt in the corporate zone. These are luxury accommodations, 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a full-size kitchen, dining room and a large living room. The only way to get access to these kinds of living quarters is by being or knowing an exec. Execs also live a good pre-pack lifestyle. This means that they have restaurant quality food and can afford to frequent excellent bars. If you're a nomad, you get access to an additional housing option through your motor role ability. This lets you add housing capacity to a vehicle and effectively turn it into your home. When someone mentions Cyberpunk, Cyberware is often what people think about. These are cybernetic implants that correct and enhance traits, as well as add new traits that are outside of the human baseline. This could be things like weapons hidden in compartments inside your body, or chips in your brain to help store information. In Cyberpunk Red, Cyberware is one of the ways that you can make your character stand out and be unique. However, Keep in mind as you select Cyberware that any Cyberware that adds traits beyond the human baseline have a humanity cost. The more you lose your humanity, the more your empathy is reduced, and the closer you are to cyberpsychosis. At character creation, humanity loss is preset, but if you acquire Cyberware in-game, you roll dice to determine humanity loss. There are 8 types of Cyberware. Fashionware contains stuff you install for personal adornment. Neuralware contains implants that enhance or augment your reflexes and mental abilities. Cyber optics improve visual abilities. Cyber audio improves auditory abilities. Internal body cyberware contain implants in your body, like organs or systemic improvements. External body cyberware installed in, on, over or immediately through the skin. Cyber limbs replace or add cybernetic arms or legs. And Borgware fully replaces the majority of your body. The Street Rat and Edgerunner methods offer templates listing suggested cyberware based on your chosen role. The templates also list the total humanity cost. This has a correction in the latest errata though, since the humanity loss should be rounded up. Rocker Boys should have -1 empathy, Solos, Netrunners, Techs, Medtechs, XX Fixers and Nomads should have -2 empathy, Medias and Lawmen are correct. According to the template, because Mithra is a fixer, she gets a cyber audio suite, an internal agent, a subdermal pocket, and I may choose one of either a voice stress analyzer or amplified hearing. I'm choosing the voice stress analyzer. This gives me a total of 16 humanity loss, which reduces my empathy by 2. I make sure to correct my empathy-based skills accordingly on my character sheet. Most cyberware come in the form of base suite containing slots that can be filled with upgrades. For Mithra, the cyber audio suite is such a base cyberware. It has 3 option slots, where internal agent and voice stress analyzer each take up a slot. Remember the device called an agent that I mentioned before that is like a smartphone. The internal agent means that Mithra has one built into her cyber audio suite. It works with audio only, which means that she could use it to make calls or listen to podcasts or whatever. I imagine that she has it linked up to her personal agent to combine the two like a built-in earpiece. The voice stress analyzer gives her +2 bonus to human perception and interrogation checks. Since this is a cyberware bonus and not an actual skill increase, I write it on the sheet as a note rather than alter the skill levels themselves. If I would add the bonus directly to the skill level, it's easy that I forget about it if I want to make changes to my cyberware in the future, or if it's disabled for some reason. Finally, I have a subdermal pocket. This is considered an external cyberware and gives me storage space under my skin. Now the Street Rat and Edgerunner variants are complete and can be used to start playing. As for the complete package variant, you get access to a total of 2550 EB to spend on everything from weapons to armor, outfit and cyberware. You also get another 800 EB to spend on fashion and fashionware. While you can keep any of the 2550 EB that you don't spend, the Eurobucks that are left from the 800 meant for fashion and fashionware are lost. By giving you money instead of items you gain a lot more options for customization. It is a more time-consuming process though. This is how I would approach it for Mithra. I would start by going through the lists of weapons, armor and gear in the Fitted for the Future chapter. Weapon lists start on page 91, armor on 96, outfit on 99, fashion on 102 and cyberware on page 110. There's also a complete list starting on page 340. I decide to go through the item tables in order, listing those that I'm interested in alongside their costs. When it comes to weapon choices, I make sure to only list weapon types that I've invested some skill points in, and that I see myself using in game. Starting with a melee weapon list, I list light melee weapon 50 EB. As for the ranged weapon list, I am invested in both handgun and autofire. I list SMG 100 EB because it requires the handgun skill but has an option for autofire. I also prefer an SMG over a heavy SMG because it can be concealed. I also make sure to list 100 basic SMG ammunition 100 EB. As for armor, I list the light armor jack 100 EB. Because I want armor for both the body and the head, I need to acquire it twice. I imagine her headpiece as a reinforced hood that she can pull up when she wants to protect her head. There are plenty of good stuff listed in the outfit table. I take note of Agent 100 EB, an anti-smog breathing mask 20 EB, a carry-all 20 EB, a computer 50 EB, a disposable cell phone 50 EB, an inflatable bed and sleeping bag 20 EB, 10 kibble packs 100 EB, 5 memory chips 50 EB, a personal care pack 20 EB, and a scrambler or descrambler 500 EB. The last one is expensive though compared to the rest. Having gone through the outfit list, I add these costs together for a total 1380 EB, leaving 1170 to spend on cyberware and additional items. We also have the 800 EB to spend on fashion and fashion wear. Mithra favors high fashion, but I would have to invest extra funds to be able to afford it. So I'm going to focus on urban flesh instead. This is represented by flashy technological streetwear. A set of bottoms, top, jacket and footwear costs a total 320 EB. With the remaining 480 EB, I add urban flash mirror shades, 100 EB, and gang collar jewelry, 50 EB, and save the remaining 330 EB for fashion wear. The idea behind the gang collar jewelry is to give her something like a necklace or a bracelet that identifies her as being affiliated with the criminal organization that her brother was part of when he was killed. This is more sentimental than an actual affiliation. It's time to consider what kind of cyberware Mithra should have. Because Mithra is primarily mental and social in her approach to solving problems, I would like cyberware to reflect this focus. Just like with how I approached items, I'll go through the cyberware lists and note down everything I'm interested in. We'll then review it later and see what I'll keep. Because I still have 330 EB to spend on fashion wear, I note that she has 3 light tattoos, 300 EB, representing both sleeves and her shoulder neck region. Because she has 3, she gains a +2 bonus to wardrobe and style. The final 30 EB is spent on some EMP threading, adding circuitry patterns across parts of her skin. Going through the list for neural wear, I decide to skip it. I don't think any of the options fit what I have in mind for Mithra. As for cyber optics, I could consider Mithra having a pair of cyber eyes, 200 EB. If she goes with a pair, she'd have 6 option slots. Image Enhance requires 2 cyber eyes and must be paired, which would make it cost 1000 EB, but it gives a +2 bonus to perception, lip reading and conceal or reveal object. I could add a Chiron to one eye for 100 EB. This projects a subscreen in the field of vision and can be used to display data. I could also add anti-dazzle to both eyes for 200 EB to gain protection from flashes of light. This would have a total cost of 1500 EB and a humanity loss of 26, which is more expensive than I can afford. If I only go with Image Enhance, it would cost 1200 EB and have a humanity loss of 20. Still, a bit too much since I would have to cut my outfit shorter. As for cyber audio, I could go with the cyber audio suite for 500 EB, just like with the Street Rat and Edge Runner approaches. This has 3 slots for additional options, which I'd like to use for bug detector, 100 EB, internal agent, 100 EB, scrambler or descrambler, 100 EB, or voice stress analyzer, 100 EB. If I go with the scrambler or descrambler, I can skip the one I selected from my outfit and save some Eurobucks. A bug detector could be useful if I want to make secret business deals. Since I can only choose 3 options, I'd probably skip the bug detector. This would have a total cost of 800 EB and a humanity loss of 15. If I compensate for no longer needing the scrambler or descrambler from the outfit, I'd still have 870 EB to spend. As for internal cyberware, I could consider something along the line of toxin binders, 100 EB, to help protect myself from possibly being drugged or poisoned by rivals. A nasal filter, 100 EB, could also help against gas attacks. I would also consider replacing my light melee weapon with vampires, 500 EB, just because they are neat. Those have a huge humanity cost though. I don't see myself getting any external cyberware or any cyberlimbs. When reviewing the cyberware that caught my interest, I decided to skip cyber optics due to the cost. I also skip vampires because of the humanity loss. Instead, I decided to go with a cyber audio suite containing an internal agent, scrambler or descrambler, and a voice stress analyzer. I also go with toxin binders and a nasal filter. This gives me 670 EB to spare, and I have a total humanity loss of 19, reducing my empathy by 2. Before deciding to call my character finished, I decided this version of Mithra should have a fancier lifestyle than other versions. She wants to get away from the streets after all, so she's willing to put in the Eurobucks for a generic pre-packed lifestyle. This means that she must pay 300 EB a month to maintain her lifestyle, but she can eat better food and afford to visit a club or bar every weekend. Now we're done. There are pros and cons to each of the three approaches. The options from the role template offered to the street rat and edge runner methods all make fully competent and playable characters. I'm personally not a fan of the edge runner approach to stat calculation though, where we roll for each individual stat, and would rather go with the street rat method there. On the other hand, I prefer the edge runner method to the street rat method during skill generation, since you get some more customization, even if the skills are the same. There is no doubt that the complete package takes longer than other methods, and since there are no real drawbacks other than more limited customization, I would recommend that new players combine some of the approaches. Use street rat or complete package for stat generation, and edge runner for skill generation. If you use the templates when buying your stuff, you're ensured a good balance of useful gear and cyberware. I would probably recommend using the templates for weapons, armor and outfit, even for experienced players, since it's generally easier to make modifications to the finished templates than it's worth investing the time to go through each purchase one by one. To avoid messing up some calculations, I recommend that you replace items or cyberware from the templates with others of equal value. If you're interested in Mithra and want to use her for your game, you can find links to the 3 character sheets in the description below. And if you like this type of content, make sure to like, share, subscribe and comment below. If you want to support me further, consider signing up to Patreon. Until next time.